Are you considering traditional homeschooling? Here's what you need to know. So, a lot of people, when they first start homeschooling, they start with a traditional homeschool model. And so, today I want to share what that is and why you might want to do it and why you might not want to. So, traditional homeschool just basically means that you're creating the experience of a school at your house. So if you're doing traditional homeschool, you're probably going to use a lot of textbooks as your curriculum. You might use workbooks. You'll probably give your kids tests to show what they've learned. You might set up a schoolroom in your house with a desk where your child sits when they do their work. This is often really good for families who maybe the parents themselves came from public school, and that's because they're doing what they know. And the structure can be really helpful for some kids and families that really need that structure. There are also tons of options of curriculum for traditional homeschooling, which can be really great for families who are just starting out. So the reasons why you might try traditional homeschooling, the first one is that it's easier for parents who have traditional school experience because that's what we know. And one of the best ways to get started with homeschooling is to do what you know. And after you've been homeschooling for a little while, you might start to move away from this model, and that's okay. There are lots of different models, and I'll put some links in the description of this video to some other options that you might consider. But when you're first starting out, it can be really helpful to start with what you know. And so that's one of the biggest pros for choosing a traditional homeschool model. It's also really easy to transition from a public school or a private school to traditional homeschooling and then back. If that's what your kid is comfortable with and familiar with, and you're homeschooling for a short period of time, using a traditional homeschool model can be really a good choice. There are also lots of good curriculum choices that are available for traditional homeschooling. And so it makes it easy to find a curriculum that follows that model. These traditional homeschooling methods also tend to involve only a little bit of planning and prep work. A lot of times you can choose a curriculum where you can just open the curriculum and teach right from the lesson plan that they provide. So you're not out there pulling together a lot of resources or trying to create something on your own. And that can be really appealing for a lot of families that are just getting started with homeschooling as well. Traditional homeschooling is ideal for kids that are visual learners that learn by reading or by seeing things. And so if your child is a visual learner who learns by reading, traditional homeschooling might be a really good choice for you. Also, when you're doing a traditional homeschooling model, it makes it easier to follow state standards and to keep track of what your child is doing as compared to other children in their grade in public school. And so if that's something that's important to your family, a traditional homeschool model might be a really good fit. In addition, when you're giving your child tests and quizzes to show what they're learning, you'll have a really good way to tell what they're learning and to be able to communicate that to someone else. It's also really easy to transition from a traditional homeschool model back to a public school if your child needs to do that in the future. There are some reasons why you might not want to consider traditional homeschooling. The first one is that it can be really expensive depending on the curriculum that you choose. A lot of the open and go traditional homeschool curriculum choices are on the very expensive end. Sometimes you can find them secondhand or used, but even still, these can be some of the more expensive homeschool curriculum options that are out there. Also, these traditional homeschool models a lot of times will include a lot of busy work and worksheets. And especially if you are a perfectionist and you feel like your child really needs to complete every problem and every assignment, then a traditional homeschool model might not be for you. It can be really easy for kids to get overwhelmed by the amount of work that they have to do, and for parents to get frustrated trying to get their kids to get through all of this work. And so if you feel like that's something that you might struggle with, then you might want to look at a different homeschool model. Also, the lessons can take a longer time to complete, so you'll probably be spending a bigger portion of your day doing homeschool than you would if you chose one of the other models. This can be a really frustrating situation for kids who don't like desks and worksheets. So if you have a more active child, again, you might want to consider something different for them. And that frustration that kids feel can lead to burnout for parents and just frustration with homeschooling in general. Especially if kids are kinesthetic or active learners, you really want to consider a different homeschool model. So traditional homeschooling might be a good fit for your family if you went to a traditional school or a public school and you want to create that kind of experience for your kid that looks like something that you did. Or if you aren't interested in learning a new way of teaching, or if your family needs to follow the state standards, or if you're homeschooling temporarily and your kids are going to be returning to a public school in the future. So what method of homeschooling are you using? Share your thoughts in the comments.